I ain't no storyteller, but I swear this is how it all went down. I don't even like talking about it, to be honest. It's been months, but every time I think back on that night, it makes my stomach turn. You always hear about guys getting in over their heads, but you never think it'll be you, not until you see it with your own eyes. It was late, just past midnight, I think. The city was quiet, too quiet actually. Normally Memphis don't ever sleep, cars screeching, folks yelling, sirens wailing, but that night, nothing. Just the hum of street lights and the occasional car passing by. I was standing on the corner of Highland and Park, right outside this rundown bodega where my boy Reggie worked sometimes. I'd just stopped by to grab some smokes and see what was up. Reggie had been acting weird lately, quiet, real twitchy, like something was on his mind. I knew him since we were kids, so I could tell when something wasn't right. He wasn't the type to get spooked easy, but lately, man, he had this look in his eyes, like he'd seen something he wasn't supposed to. As I stepped out of the store, I noticed a black SUV parked across the street. One of those big tinted window Escalades just sitting there, engine off, lights off. At first I didn't think much of it, but then I saw the guy inside. He was sitting in the driver's seat just staring straight at me. I looked back at Reggie through the window of the bodega. He was watching the SUV too, his eyes wide like a deer caught in headlights. That's when I knew something was up. I crossed the street, my heart racing, but I tried to keep it cool. "Yo, what's good, man?" I said, hoping to play it off like I wasn't nervous. "Get in," the driver said. His voice was low, serious. I couldn't see his face too well through the tint, but something about him felt off, real off. "Nah, I'm good," I replied, backing up a bit. "I'm just waiting on my boy." But he wasn't hearing it. The passenger window rolled down and another guy poked his head out. Big dude, bald, with a scar running down his cheek. "Get in." I ain't no fool. These weren't the type of dudes you mess with. So I opened the door and got in. The SUV was cold, like freezing cold, and the smell of leather hit me hard. I sat in the back, my knees up against the seat in front of me. The driver, a tall guy wearing a hoodie pulled low over his face, glanced at me through the rearview mirror. "You know Reggie, right?" "Yeah, we go way back," I said, my voice a little shaky now. I tried to act casual, but inside I was freaking out. The guy in the passenger seat lit a cigarette, his eyes never leaving me. "Reggie's got a problem, he's been talking too much." "What you mean?" I asked, but deep down I already knew. Reggie had gotten himself mixed up in something heavy. I'd heard rumors about a crew, some kind of gang war brewing in the streets, but I never asked questions. It wasn't my business, but now it felt like I was right in the middle of it. The SUV started moving. We weren't going fast, just cruising down the empty streets of Memphis. My mind was racing, trying to piece together what was going on. Why me? Why now? "Reggie's been running his mouth to the wrong people," the driver said after a long silence, "and that's a problem." I stayed quiet, my hands clenched into fists. I wasn't about to snitch on my boy, but I didn't want to get caught up in whatever mess this was either. We drove for a while, maybe 20 minutes, before we pulled into this old warehouse down by the river, the kind of place no one goes unless they got a reason. The SUV came to a stop and the guys up front got out. The driver opened my door, motioning for me to follow. I stepped out, my legs shaky, and followed them into the building. The place was dark and smelled like oil and rust. There were a few other guys inside, standing around this long metal table, talking in low voices. I recognized one of them, Big Mike. He used to run with Reggie and me back in the day, but he'd gotten deep into the streets. Now he was one of the top dogs around here. He looked up when he saw me, his face hard. "Marcus," he said, nodding. "Didn't expect to see you here." "I didn't expect to be here," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "What's going on?" Big Mike didn't answer right away. He just looked at the guys around the table, then back at me. "Reggie's been talking," he said finally. "He's been leaking info to the other side." I felt my stomach drop. "No way," I muttered, shaking my head. "Reggie wouldn't do that." But the look on Mike's face told me otherwise. He walked over to me, his eyes cold. "You think you know him, but trust me, Marcus, people change, especially when they get scared." "What does this have to do with me?" I asked, my voice a little higher than I wanted it to be. "We need to know if you're loyal," Mike said, stepping closer. "Reggie's your boy. If you know anything, now's the time to say it." I didn't know what to say. Reggie and I had been through a lot together, but I didn't know anything about him talking to the other side. I wasn't involved in all that street stuff, but now it felt like I had a target on my back. "I don't know nothing," I said, finally looking Mike dead in the eyes. "I ain't mixed up in this." He stared at me for a long time before he finally nodded. "All right," he said, "then you'll help us." "Help you with what?" The guys around the table started moving, gathering up guns and bags of cash. That's when I realized what was happening. Mike walked over to the table, pulling out a map of the city. "We're hitting them tonight. Reggie's been feeding them info, so they're expecting something, but not this. We're gonna hit them hard and fast." My heart was pounding in my chest, and if I don't help? Mike didn't say anything, but the look he gave me was enough. I didn't have a choice. We rolled out a few minutes later, the SUV packed with guns and gear. My mind was racing. I didn't know what to expect, but I knew one thing for sure: this wasn't going to end well. The plan was simple: hit the stash house, grab the cash, and get out, but nothing ever goes as planned. When we pulled up to the spot, a rundown house on the edge of town, something felt off. The lights were off, and there was no one around. It was too quiet. Mike gave the signal and we moved in. The front door was unlocked, which should have been the first red flag, but we didn't have time to think. We stormed in, guns drawn, ready for anything. But the place was empty, completely empty. "What the fuck?" one of the guys muttered, looking around. That's when we heard it, the sound of cars pulling up outside, a lot of cars. Mike's face went pale. "It's a setup," he said, his voice barely a whisper. Before we could react, the windows shattered and bullets started flying. It was chaos. I hit the floor, crawling behind a couch as the gunfire echoed around the room. I don't know how long it lasted, maybe a few minutes, maybe an hour, but when it was over, the place was destroyed, blood everywhere, bodies lying on the floor. I managed to crawl out through the back, my head spinning. I don't know how I made it out alive, but I did. I never saw Mike or the others again. Reggie disappeared too. No one knows what happened to him, but I got a feeling he ain't around anymore. To this day, I don't know who set us up. Was it Reggie? Was he really a rat? Or was it someone else playing both sides? I guess I'll never know. But one thing's for sure, I should have stayed home that night.